are you a super mum, but you've got an extraordinary history, professional history that you're bringing to Nudie Rooty Lunchbox.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it feels like you wear so many hats, and I am absolutely in awe. But would you like to just tell us a little bit about Nudie Rooty Lunchbox? And then I've got a few little questions.
So I'll give you a bit of background to me. So I've been a paediatric dietitian for 17 years now. That almost sounds a bit scary. I don't know where that time has gone. I started my career in Melbourne. So Melbourne's very close to my heart. I worked at the Royal Children's in Melbourne. And after a stint there, I came back to my hometown of Adelaide. I worked at the Women's and Children's. And then eventually my 4 kids came along. And so as the kids came along, I've sort of dabbled in part-time work back at the hospital. I've gone out into private clinics, and currently I work as part of a multidisciplinary feeding team where we look after kids that have a range of eating problems, but the fussy kids to the really extreme fussy eating kids, and also kids with nasogastric tubes and more permanent gastrostomies, we teach them to eat. So I do that on a very, very part-time basis though, because I have 4 kids. And then of course there's the whole Nudie Rooty. So Nudie Rooty basically started, I suppose, out of a bit of a frustration. Something I have always enjoyed putting in my kids' lunch boxes or sending them off to kindy with were either little milk poppers, just the plain, little Devondale milk poppers that you can send, or smoothies. I've always liked sending a smoothie. They're something I recommend to a lot of the families I work with because they're sort of a nutritional powerhouse. You can get so many things in a smoothie. And it's something I wanted to send off to school. So I was sort of trying to find these insulated bottles, and they either popped open and there was smoothie all through the bag, or the kids couldn't get them open, or all sorts of things with it. So I kind of had 2 problems on my hand. I was either sending milk poppers, where you've got a lot of obviously waste, and we're much more concerned about the environment and not using single-use packages. And the second thing, I was trying to find something that I could send a smoothie in. So basically I thought, well, I can't find the kind of insulated bottle that I want in the market, so I can do this myself. I'm going to get some small insulated bottles and give people this idea that they can send smoothies or milk drinks to school without needing the waste of those poppers. So that is basically where we are heading with Nudie Rooty. The name Nudie Rooty is more nude food, less packaging. A couple of months away now from having our beautiful insulated bottles, and they are gorgeous. And then a part of that, just trying to inspire people with ideas that they can obviously, food ideas they can use.
I know 2 people, my friends Fran and Katrina, have just come up on. Katrina's a mum of 4, and Fran is a mum of, had 3 babies under 3. So it was actually Fran who, I follow you, and I was watching, and Fran and I were talking on a text about snacks. Fran and I were saying, what do we do for snacks? I'm not sure about other people, but here in lockdown in Melbourne, if Magnus says one more time, I'm starving, 2 seconds after his half-eaten bowl of porridge is still sitting on the table, that is triggering for me. But so I just wanted to talk a little bit about anyone who knows me and follows this page know that I put cauliflower in a lot of things, and Julia and I've been emailing about this. So I really stress about snacks because I want them to have healthy, nutritional snacks. And from the get-go, so when a baby's passed purees and has done some, we did baby-led weaning and purees here, what are some good options? I really stress about making sure that things are healthy, but detriment of my boys' happiness, I think.
Yeah, let's talk snacks in general. Perhaps what's happening in lockdown at the moment is that I think when you're all home all day and you're all under the same roof, you lose a lot of the structure that you might have your day otherwise. Structure around meals and snacks is a really important thing for helping kids to eat well and be in tune with their appetite. So really what you want to be doing with your kids is setting them up so that so for very young kids, so sort of the toddler age, you want them to be eating every 2 to 3 hours. Older kids are heading towards that school age every 3 to 4 hours, but younger kids every 2 to 3 hours. So if you can set up a structure during the day where you've got breakfast, and then breakfast is finished and the kitchen's closed, and we're not going to eat again until your next planned meal or snack time, right there you are going to set yourself up already for a bit of success around eating. The reason being that we want children to come to the table with an appetite. We don't want them starving hungry, but we don't want them full either. So when you're getting into that situation where you've lost all the structure of the day, what you find is happening is that your kids are constantly picking on food, and they're never really full and they're never really hungry. And it's not a great situation to get into with kids, because they're not learning to tune into their natural appetite signals when they're eating like that. Kids are amazing appetite regulators, and we want to preserve that as much as possible. We want to give them the ability to tap into those signals that says, hey, I'm hungry, I need to eat, and okay, now I'm full and I'm going to stop. So creating that structured environment really helps kids to be able to do that. And that is something we want to hold on to for the rest of their lives, basically. So structure is really important. And that is one of the things that tends to go out the window during school holidays when everyone's home and the routine goes. And I think that's what's happening in lockdown now. So my key tip around the snack is you need to maintain some sort of structure.
Do you recommend putting a little schedule up so everyone in the household can see? Because I think in a lot of circumstances here, both parents are home when usually it might have just been one parent.
Yes.
So
you're both on the same page, and that you are, as much as you possibly can, sticking to that schedule. So when the kids are coming to see you and you know you gave them breakfast half an hour ago, you can say, I'm sorry, the kitchen's closed, but it's going to be snack time soon. So you're being empathetic towards their needs. You're saying, I've heard you. You were telling me you are hungry, but it's not eating time now. It's coming soon though. And if you stick to that schedule and you stick to those boundaries, kids will learn to respond to that. And then they will learn that they can't keep asking mum for the snack because she's not going to deliver on it. I have to wait till 9:30 or 10 o'clock or whenever, whatever your particular family schedule is that works for you. They learn that is when they're going to get that snack. You can see that your kids are absolutely starving hungry and they didn't do particularly well at breakfast. Be flexible. Bring your snack forward by 15 minutes, half an hour. But you really want to try as much as possible to stick to that schedule of snacks. Easy when everyone's at home and you're busy to kind of forget about that snack time. You, as parents, adults, we're not looking for that snack as much as kids. It's less important. And so you might get caught up in your work. And if you've forgotten that snack time and suddenly all the kids are at you, hungry, I'm hungry, and they're looking in the kitchen for their own snacks, that's when it all tends to fall apart. And you're going to sort of end up in that fight of they've gone to find what it is that they want to eat right now, which may not be what you had planned for them to eat. So you want to avoid that situation. Stick to your schedule and have the food out ready to go. I always feel it works better if you've got the snack out and ready to go at the planned time rather than they've come to you when you're like, oh, okay, here we go. So that planning is important.
On that, do you think it's a good idea to do your snacks as if they're going to school or childcare that you would do in their lunch boxes, or have those things ready in part of this routine?
I've seen a lot of people on social media deciding they're going to do lunch boxes even though their kids aren't at kinder or school. And, I think that can be a really good thing, especially if you are trying to work at home and you've got kids who are trying to do homeschooling. Maybe just getting a lot of your food prep out of the way in the morning. It's done, it's dusted, you've messed up the kitchen once, you've cleaned it, and then you can focus on your other things. I actually think that's probably really helpful for a lot of families. But if it suits you to, stop your work and take a break and make the morning tea and then do it again at lunchtime, then equally that's fine. It's really just about sticking to that schedule and being firm on it. Because I suppose there's a lot of focus out there on what we should feed our kids, but I think we almost need to step back from that and talk about how we feed them as well, because the how we feed them is actually going to set you up for, possibly or as much success as what you feed them. They're both really important, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Before we get into some ideas, I think probably what we need to talk about is that you need to have a framework around how you're going to feed your kids. And this is often the missing link that I think lots of parents don't learn about in the early years of childhood. And that is, what we want to create is a division of responsibility around feeding. This is the philosophy that underpins all of sort of childhood feeding, basically. And with this philosophy, we say that it's up to parents to decide the what, the when, and the where of eating. So when and where, we've kind of been talking about that with the structure already. Where a table, we'll come back to that. Then your job is done. And it's up to the kids after that to decide whether they are going to eat it or not and how much of it they are going to eat. So once you have put that selection of healthy foods on the table, your job is pretty much done. It is then over to them. And that is a really big thing for a lot of people to get their heads around. because I think for a lot of parents, we sort of feel, right, okay, well, I know what healthy food I need to put on the table. It's on the table, but they're not eating it. So now what do I do now, basically? So you need that framework to go back on, because your job actually isn't to get your children to eat the food. Your job is to serve the food and create the right environment to make them be successful with eating in the long run.
Also, it's a little bit of that devolving a bit of independent, so many toddlers, so many little babies start out as such independent eaters, and we see that when they're learning to hold their food and to put their food in their mouth, is that they love to do it by themselves. And so I suppose encouraging that continuation of independence is...
Yeah, you've hit on a really interesting point there, that babies in general tend to be fairly accepting of food, and it is probably the most common experience that people have a good experience of feeding their babies. They accept lots of different food, generally not a particularly stressful time. It rolls along, kids are accepting of, but they often derails around that 18-month age, and that's where we start to see the fussiness. And that is where you really need to have that framework and those principles and that structure to fall back on. Otherwise, you can that's when you start to feel stressed. Those toddlers will start to derail and become fussy for a number of reasons. I think the first thing you need to know is that's perfectly normal. It is 100% normal. And the majority of toddlers will go through that stage. And it happens for a variety of reasons. One being that growth really, really slows down in that second year of life. So kids actually don't need to eat very much. And there's quite a big disconnect between what we think they need to eat as parents and what they actually need to eat. And the more pressure we put on our kids to eat, the more they actually put the brakes on, and it goes the other way. Plus, the other thing that's happening during the toddler years is exactly what you just talked about, the process of individualization, getting a bit of autonomy. They start to see themselves as a person distinct from their parent who can make choices. The other thing that's happening is their sensory system is continuing to mature, so they might become more heightened to textures in their food, taste of their food, smell of their food. So all of those little things are happening, and we have to be empathetic to that, but you need that framework to fall back on. I've given you that framework, so let's talk about how it translates into practice when you're actually putting the snack or the meal on the table. So you need to decide what is for dinner. So meal planning can be really helpful here. But, let's say you are having and you're doing a few different vegetables, and maybe you're having a bit of, pasta or couscous or something on the side. It's some sort of meal like that. So one, you've decided that's what the entire family is going to eat. It is really, really important for these young kids that we are sitting down as a family to eat. A family being one parent. We need to have an adult there for role modelling. Your primary carers are your best role models and your best teachers about the whole process of food and eating. So I know it's really common with young kids to want to feed them early at 5 o'clock.
I love 5 o'clock dinner personally for myself. Yeah. So
they are the ones that need some teaching and some role modelling at this age. So it is the time where you say, okay, well, we're going to just have to eat at 5 o'clock. One parent needs to eat at 5 o'clock. The other one, dad's coming home at 7:30 and he has to eat by himself. Well, dad knows how to eat. So that's just how life has to be for a little while. He can cope. It's important that we role model and that we're not catering to the kids, but we are being considerate of where they are at with eating. So let's decide we've had that meal, we're having the schnitzel, the veggies, the couscous, some sort of something like that. Now, instead of just plating it up on the plate in front of them, we would recommend doing what we call family style eating, which is kind of like serving a buffet, I suppose. Put all of those different foods out in the middle of the table in different bowls, and everyone can help themselves. So you have decided what we're going to eat, but the kids are going to select from that what they feel confident eating, and they are going to determine how much they are going to eat based on their own appetite. When you do that, you might have kids that only choose the schnitzel, but you're creating an environment where they feel really comfortable around food. They don't feel pressure to eat. And what the research shows us is that slowly but surely over time with that approach, kids will feel confident to branch out and will start taking a handful of the carrots or a bit of this or a bit of that. It's slow, steady work, but it respects where your child is at in the learning process. With a lot of other things in childhood, like reading and writing, we acknowledge that it's going to take years for them to be able to craft a really good sentence. But with food, we kind of expect it just to happen. You've got to eat the healthy, balanced diet straight away. But kids are learning with that too. And we need to give them the right feeding environment to be able to, it's okay for your child just to choose the schnitzel and the couscous, because their nutrition isn't decided in that single meal. Their nutrition is decided over a longer period of time. Good nutrition adds up to, what they get over the course of days to a week to a month. So over that period of time, they will get their nutrients in. It may not look balanced in that single meal at that single time, but over the course of the day or the week, they'll get it in.
Can you tell me, we've got a lot of, Kate just said it's really good to hear that about the nutrition, because I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves. This meal is the be-all and end-all. This is where they're getting all their vitamins. Can we just talk about, though, at that 18 months, that toddler stage when things get a bit fussy? I know that professionally you deal with a wide range of issues. What are some warnings? Are there warning signs that we should look out for if we're worried? Because you did mention that it's natural for parents to worry about this, but when should we really worry?
The first thing I would say, typically developing fussy eater is someone who will, plenty of foods they do eat. When they're presented with new foods, they may be more anxious around something they've never seen before, but they have a range of foods. They're eating some things, they're not eating other things. You don't feel particularly stressed about it. That's sort of what I describe as normal toddler eating. Their eating is getting to the point where you feel stressed and upset every mealtime, and you don't feel like you can contain that, then that is probably a point where I'd say get help anyway. Because often it's just some reassurance. It's talking through some strategies like we did just then. And often parents just need to hear, hey, your child's actually better nourished than you think they are. They may not be eating all the veggies and all the whole grains and all those other healthy foods that we think about, but there's more than one way to eat that will tick off those boxes of basic nutrition and get enough energy, enough calories and protein in them to grow. So a lot of parents will come to me just stressed about their kids eating and go, wait, look, you know what? They're actually not doing too badly. The diet isn't perfect, but we'll work towards that. They're actually getting enough with what they're doing at the moment. So if that's you, if you're really stressed about every mealtime, it's worth getting some help. So if your child is having fewer than 20 foods that they accept, that's a warning sign. That's a red flag, and that's something you want to get some professional help about. And if it's just the same foods over and over and over again, and they're not happy to venture outside those foods, that is a warning sign. Other things that I would probably recommend seeking professional help about fairly quickly is when there seems to be issues around the texture of the food, which can often be a sensory issue, and there's lots of things that we can do around that. And I suppose going back a step for babies, if you have a baby that's really struggling to make some of those textural transitions, so if you are doing the more traditional style of weaning and you're stuck on the purees and you can't move through to the lumpy and the finger foods, that's probably something I would recommend that you get some help about.
I think it's so reassuring to hear from a professional that there's nothing wrong with getting help if you're seeing some of those issues. And if you just want some reassurance, like Kate said before, it feels so nice to hear you say there's so much pressure and release a bit of that from yourself. Talking about taking pressure off, you're a big fan of batch cooking, batch and freezing cooking. Just tell us a little bit about that, because I love it's like I just follow you and get all obsessive.
So I do that batch cooking for a number of reasons. Busy with 4 kids, but when it comes to the foods that I'm putting in my kids' lunch boxes, because most of my kids are at school now, so they're 11, 9 and 6, so they're at school, and then my 4-year-olds, they're kindy. So when it comes to the snacks I'm choosing for their lunch boxes, I do like most of their food to be as nutrient dense and tasty as it can be. Snacks, I don't want anyone to feel like they are inadequate because they're not cooking from scratch, because that is not the case. There are plenty of things that you can go and grab that are fantastic. I do know that if I make a chocolate zucchini muffin at home, or some of the little seedy slices that I'm I bake quite frequently. I know that I've really boosted the nutrition in that snack, and I'm giving them a really balanced, wholesome snack that's going to give them the nutrition that they need. So to make that happen, I obviously can't be baking every day. I am sort of in a routine where Mondays is my food day, because that works for us. I'll meal plan for the week, I'll shop for the week. And if I'm running low on freezer stock of baked goods, then that's when I'll decide whatever the snack is going to be this week, do a batch of something, and I might do a batch of something like pizza scrolls for the lunchbox as well, because my kids love those. They're a really quick, easy thing to grab out to speed up the lunchbox pack. So if you have the time and inclination to do something like that, I think it can be really helpful to have those things on hand. You know, if you are busy and you're stressed, time poor, you don't have to do that either. There are options in the supermarket that you can grab that are healthy alternatives. Things like raisin toast, for example, whole grain cheese. There are options there that you can go to.
Can you tell me just on that, around supermarket snack? I know a lot of things are packaged up, and I want to talk about smoothies for a bit, but supermarket snacks, what would you recommend there? So if, you know, there's a little thing of popcorn, taking it out of the packet if you're having it at home and putting it in a bowl so that it's part of that process rather than the plastic.
Yep, fantastic idea. Yeah, so popcorn's a really good healthy snack. I have actually got a healthy snack list that I've been doing for my page, and how about I send it to you and you could have it your newsletter. I will say it is sort of aimed at that 4 years and above. Things like popcorn are a choking risk for under 4, but it's got some great ideas. But you also just touched on something else that's really important. There is this sort of idea, I guess, out there that a snack has to come in a packet. It's got to be something that we grab in the supermarket, and it doesn't have to be. And I work with kids that if they've only been presented with things in packets, they can get quite upset about it not being the particular packet that they're used to. So one of the strategies we use straight away to get with kids who are very particular about having exactly the same type of food every time is to start opening up the packets and tipping it out, so they're not associating that packet as being part of the snack. So yeah, that can be a really handy strategy. But yeah, there's definitely things we can use in the supermarket. And also, you know, think outside the box of a snack. A boiled egg is a snack. Obviously, fresh fruit and veggies is a snack. My daughter likes tin chickpeas, and Edge will make little mini ones now, which are really good for things like that. You know, we just rinse some of those and chuck a handful of those in her lunchbox or on a plate if we're eating a snack. So just, you know, really simple thing.
About smoothies, because I love smoothies, and the boys have had a big chunk of that with their breakfast. You love smoothies, I love smoothies. Let's talk smoothies.
I particularly like smoothie. I find myself recommending smoothies to so many of the families that I work with because I think they are quite well accepted by children. Probably one of the reasons they are well accepted is that I think kids have often usually not been put in the situation where they've been forced to eat it, like they've been forced to eat the broccoli. It's often been presented as a bit more of a fun food right from the outset. And when we remove that pressure from kids, they are more likely to try it. So I think there's probably something about that there that I do find that more kids accept them. That's not all kids. That's just something I've noticed. The reason I like smoothies is that they're just such a good way to really bump up the plant food in your child's diet and get some fibre into them. And for the kids that I work with that are fussy, that are really still learning to like their vegetables, maybe still learning to like their whole grains, fibre is one of those nutrients that often is lacking in their diet. So we will try and do some little tweaks in their diet to boost the fibre up, because we don't want kids that are constipated. Once they've got tummy pain, they tend not to eat particularly well then either. So I love a smoothie from that point of view. You can get fruit in there, you can get veggies in there. We can add whole grains in there, like oats, for example. I love having things like chia seeds because they're a great source of protein, have a bit of calcium in there. They have your plant-based healthy fats. And of course, if you're using dairy, you're going to be using a great source of calcium and plenty of protein in there as well. So there's a real powerhouse of nutrition for kids. And like I said, they tend to be well accepted. Try and get your kids involved in food preparation. So making smoothies with you, let's take this beige looking banana smoothie and see if we can turn it green with a piece of baby spinach. How much baby spinach does it take to turn it green? Getting them introduced to the whole process like that is a really important part of them learning about the food and wanting to move from that. I'm a bit curious to actually, I want to try it, to actually I enjoy it and it's something I want to eat.
Can you just talk about why that texture touching is so important?
Yeah, it's really, really important. And look, I find mess really triggering as well. I'm someone who likes things neat and clean and tidy. It's vitally important that you let kids make a mess and experience food through all of their senses, because we know that is how they learn about food. So we often talk about the fact there's lots of different steps along the road to learning to eat a food for children. So some of the basic starting points, a kids actually need to be able to tolerate looking at a food. Believe it or not, I have some kids that they can't look at food. They need to be able to tolerate the smell of the food. So that's where it starts. From that, they need to be able to learn to handle and touch the food, because they are learning a lot just through that feeling of the food in their hands. From that, they need to be able to put it in their mouth, but be able to spit it out and have no pressure to eat it. And then gradually from there, it goes towards tasting a little bit, doing that over and over and over again for a lot of kids, to eventually, actually, I like that. I know what that food is. I'm happy to eat it. And is really useful, because often when we're cooking the food, we don't want them to eat it at that point. So there's not that pressure to eat the food. They know, they're just here having fun with the food. And that's often where your kid will swipe something and just stick it in their mouth and eat it and have a go at it. And it can be a complete surprise. Like, whoa, did you see that? Whereas once food gets to the dinner table, I know for a lot of parents, it's really hard to back that pressure off and just let them go. And kids just, they won't eat if they sense that pressure. The pressure to eat is something that really puts the brakes on for a lot of kids. Yeah. And the other thing just on that is that I think a lot of us, when we, and me too, I'm guilty of this, when we go to cook with our kids, it's often baking. Let's bake something. We want to get them up there and involved in the main meal preparation, because that's when they're going to get the exposure to the veggies, the meat, mixing of the food, which are the things that kids often find the hardest to cope with. So you get some kiddie knives and get them up there helping you with the cutting of the vegetables early on can be really beneficial.
This is a question. This is a really personal question around what we do, and I'm not sure whether it's the right thing to do. So I would love your advice on this, Julia. Our boys eat veggies. You know, they're very focused on being big boys. They've got big cousins. They've got big neighbours. So we're like, oh, that broccoli, muscles, they're so big from that broccoli. Is that a helpful thing to say, or is that, am I putting too much pressure on?
Generally, so look, pressure comes in different shapes and sizes. The best advice I can give you is to be completely nonchalant about what they do or don't eat at the dinner table.
Okay.
It's very common, and it comes from a desire to want your kids to continue eating like that. So I completely understand why, that is normal parenting behaviour. But pressure for kids comes in different shapes and sizes. So your most common pressure at the dinner table is, please eat that broccoli. No, one mouthful more of broccoli. No, we're not going to have any dessert until that broccoli's in. That is obvious pressure. It's negative pressure. It just backfires in the long run. Studies have shown us that for kids that are fussy, the more, if we follow them over time, as parents add more and more pressure onto that eating environment, guess what? The fussy eating becomes fussier and fussier. So we have to back that pressure off completely. So that's obvious pressure when you're trying to force them to eat. The other thing that just have one more bite does is it removes that child's ability to regulate their own appetite that we were talking about earlier, and that is so, so important. Just like your husband can't know when we come to the dinner table how hungry you are, you can't know how hungry your child is. Only your child knows how hungry they are. And you have to trust that they can do that, because we are all born with an amazing ability to regulate our appetite. And we think that it's probably the environment around us that starts to derail that during childhood because of things like we are asked to clear our plate or just eat one more bite. So that's the negative pressure. But then there's positive pressure. So, a lot of us feel like, oh my goodness, we want to rejoice. We saw them eat carrot for the first time, and you've been hanging out for that. And you're like, did you see that? They ate carrot. Yes. in that particular space and time, the stars and moon may have aligned, and for whatever reason, maybe you presented the food just right. Who knows? The child just felt that was the moment that they wanted to try that carrot. But suddenly they are the center of attention for eating that carrot. And then they feel like, oh, mum's going to expect that of me every single time I do this. And I'm not really sure that I can do that. I just tried that carrot and it was okay, but I haven't really learned that I love it yet, because kids need lots of exposures, like 10 to 15 times of a new food, to really learn that it's something they enjoy. So even when you put that positive pressure on them, you're kind of setting them up to always have to perform at that level. And if they feel they can't, then they are more likely just to go, no, I'm not going to do that at all. So the best thing is to be completely food neutral at the table and actually not talk about the food at all. So we recommend that the time that you sit down with your kids is the time where you want to chat about other things. For older kids, how was your day? I actually often recommend a lot of talk-based games at the table. Try and keep the focus off food. So with some of my kids, I'll do things like, it depends on the age, but can you name, let's see how many animals we can name. So we'll go around the table and mummy says cat, and someone says dog, bird. And you can, depending on the age, then you can change that game slightly. Let's name Australian animals. Let's name African animals, or kind of communication-based games.
Awesome.
Just
a great idea.
The pressure. Yeah, it reduces the pressure completely at the dinner table. Takes that focus off food so that kids can feel that they are in a safe place to one day reach out and take the carrot or whatever it might be. And
I cannot thank you enough for today, because there's been comments here about how helpful it is, and I feel like before babies start eating, you need to talk to you about setting up these really good structures around food, because I think that was something that I felt that I've researched so much about childhood nutrition, not about the structure or the process of it.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I think like we said at the beginning, there's so much focus on what we should be eating, but I think most parents know what we're heading towards. They just don't know how to get there. It's the how we feed them. So that's kind of, that's the missing link, I suppose. Yeah.
Extraordinary. I cannot thank you enough. I've got a million questions, so we might have to do this again, and I think I will have more and more questions, and I might even email you some questions and start putting them up on our Instagram stories and on our posts too, because I just think it's so. We'll speak soon.
Yes,
thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having me. All right. Bye.
Such a joy. Bye.
Bye.